Last week we began to talk about the end of the story and the significance of the end of the story. And I mentioned that in my family, and maybe in the entire world, I'm kind of a weird person in that I don't mind spoilers for end of stories. You know, for a film, it's okay if people tell me how it ends. I often will find out ahead of time how it's going to end, so I know the plot, so I can look at it differently. And I, sometimes turn to, my friend Giannis is like, "You're an idiot, Mark," but I'm weird in that way, in that, spoilers do not annoy me. But today is going to be a sermon of spoilers, and Isaiah is going to spoil the story for us. Before we get to the end, we're going to find out what the end of the story is. I found these images. These were kind of fun. For Shakespeare, everyone dies, and everyone dies, and everyone dies. For Jane Austen, everyone gets married, and everyone gets married, and everyone gets married. For Dickens, poor kid becomes rich kid, and poor kid becomes rich, and poor kid becomes rich. And for maybe some of you, especially from around here, one of your favorite authors is Tolstoy, and so life is bleak, and life is bleak, and life is bleak. So those are how lots of stories end, and probably most of you are familiar with a few of those texts, and you kind of know what that is talking about. Now, of course, some of those endings are good, and some of them are not so good. But what was interesting as I was thinking about those is the different kinds of endings are not as contradictory as they might seem. So Shakespeare, everyone dies. That seems like a bad ending. And those are all his tragedies. So yeah, everyone dies. But then the question is that really the end of the story? When the play ends, is it the end of the story? And yeah, life is bleak. But what if everyone gets married at the end? And what if, as a matter of fact, the poor kids become rich? What if all of those endings are at least partially true? A couple spoilers now. Spoiler number one, it ends well. The story ends well. And even how we prayed a moment ago, our present experience is a lot like Tolstoy. Life is bleak and people die. Just this week I lost a friend to cancer. When he was diagnosed with cancer, it was pretty severe. Expectation wasn't good, but he was fighting it, and he fought it for about a year, and I hadn't heard anything from him for more than a month or so, and just his son-in-law posted on Facebook, we had to say goodbye. Now, all of you have that story. At least most of you, you've lost someone. Maybe recently, you might be anticipating that possibility. If you have parents who are old, you have that expectation. But the story ends well. It's going to end well. The poor boy is going to be rich. And everyone's going to get married. At least everyone who wants to get married is going to get married. But spoiler number two is this: the end is not heaven. The end is not heaven. The future is not really heaven. The story is not about heaven. It's about something better than heaven. The problem with using the word heaven is this is often people's imagination of what heaven is about. It's going to be up in the clouds. Which I think, why? How is that more beautiful than, let's say, a green garden? And what are we going to do? There's the images of, playing harps and that kind of thing. And it's an eternity of sitting in clouds playing harps. And of course, it's no wonder that a lot of people really are like, that's not the future I want, and I'm not really interested in that. The other place might actually be more interesting than that kind of heaven. And this kind of image, of course, creates, all sorts of cartoons, and this was just a plain one. I mean, if you just Google, heaven cartoon images, and you can find the widest range of ideas. And out of all of them, I just chose this one. I doubt there's too many golfers here, but you could pick another sport. But this is kind of funny on several levels. Sorry, we've never got enough golfers here to make it worthwhile to put in a golf course. But you can't imagine, a golf course in that vision of heaven. That's not what eternity is going to be like. It's so much more interesting and amazing, the future that God has in mind for people. And so that's what I want to look at today, both in Isaiah and then in the book of Revelation that Tanya has already referred to. In Isaiah chapter 11, we've kind of used this first image that Tanya did as sort of our theme image for the book of Isaiah. A branch from Jesse's root will bear fruit. And there's just a remnant of people left, and everyone is kind of disappointing. We've talked about that. I mean, everyone is a disappointment in the story in Isaiah. Even the best of the humans are a disappointment, but there's a promise that he's going to send someone. God is going to send someone, and life is going to come. Of course, as we've talked about, that's Jesus Christ. And last week, we looked at the part of the end of the story that focused on the nations. Then in that day, the nations will resort to the root of Jesse, will stand as a signal for the peoples, and his resting place will be glorious. Even in the kind of the Old Testament part of the story was always about the nations. And again, it was like what we had here, Latvian, African, and American, Asian on the sound, and all sorts of other nations doing things. I mean, it just blows me away that every Sunday morning we get to experience that little truth of right there. One of the reasons I believe that is I get a chance to see that. We get a chance to actually see that's possible. That is actually possible. In a world where that other tragedy occurs, this is still possible. In Isaiah 11, in the middle of that text, though, there are some of these images that have, found their way into Tanya's painting. The wolf will live with the lamb. The leopard will lie down with the goat. The calf and the lion and the yearling together. And a little child will lead them. The cow will feed with the bear. Their young will lie down together. The lion will eat straw like the ox. The infant will play near the cobra's den, and the young child would put its hand into the speaker's in the way, into the viper's nest. They will neither harm nor destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. And this image of the different kinds of animals, feeding together is going to be in the next text we're going to look at, and in other places in the Bible. I found this image, and I mainly put this up for humor's sake, and I realized, this kind of humor might not appeal to you, and, the image of the lion and the lamb drinking together, it's probably not what Isaiah was envisioning. But here's why I put that up, okay, is to make a point about these kind of images, is that they're images pointing to a truth. Here in this text, Isaiah is not mainly concerned about animal behavior. This is a way of describing a new kind of life that we don't yet experience. In this new heavens and new earth we're going to talk about, I don't know exactly how animals are going to behave. I hope they don't change too much, because if they all act like the same animal, that's not so interesting. Okay, but my point is here, the main point here isn't about animals. It's about how we are going to experience life. Okay, it's about a completely different kind of life that's going to blow us away, and anything in the present life that seems to be negative, it's going to be overturned, it's going to be reversed, and we're going to experience life in the future differently. But where this especially comes up is in Isaiah 65, starting in verse 17. And this is the future, not heaven in the clouds, but a future that is very earthly and physical, where all the good things that actually God has already put into this world, we will still be able to experience. Behold, I create a new heavens and a new earth. The former things will not be remembered, nor will they come into mind. But be glad and rejoice forever in what I will create. For I will create Jerusalem to be a delight and its people a joy. Now the next verse is really interesting because this is God speaking. I will rejoice over Jerusalem and take delight in my people. The sound of weeping and of crying will be heard in it no more. It's not just the rejoicing of the people. It's God is actually going to delight in being with his people. God will actually delight in us. God, the great creator of the universe, will delight in us. He genuinely cares about us. And he wants to be with us. That's what the story is going to be about. We'll see how clearly that's communicated in the book of Revelation. But he will delight in us, not just us delighting in him, and not just us rejoicing in him, but he will rejoice in us. He will be happy in this relationship with us. I mean, the amazing picture that Isaiah paints of God and how great he is, and no one is like him, and no one can be compared to him, and burn the idols because they don't compare. There is no Savior besides him. And there's that emphasis. He alone is Lord. This great God that Isaiah paints for us, and God is saying, I will delight in my people. Yeah, I'm the amazing God of the universe. And this is why the God of the Bible is so amazing. He's not just separate and distant. He created us for a purpose, for our joy and his joy, and for our joy together. Never again will there be in it an infant who lives but a few days, or an old man who does not live out his years. He who dies at 100 will be thought a mere youth. He who fails to reach 100 will be considered accursed. They will build houses and dwell in them. They will plant vineyards and eat of their fruit. No longer will they build houses and others live in them, or plant and others eat. For as the days of a tree, so will be the days of my people. My chosen ones will long enjoy the works of their hands. Of course, the people experienced the reverse of this. You know, as nations were invading them, I mean, there would literally have been people who had built a house and planted a vineyard and worked for that. And then the enemy army came and drove them off the land, and literally someone else was living, in their house that they built, and someone else was getting the fruit and the wine of their vineyard. I mean, some people literally experienced working for nothing. And Isaiah is simply saying, no, that's never going to happen again. In the new heavens and the new earth, you can rejoice in the works of your hands. You will be able to enjoy them, and God will guarantee them. By the way, there's an interesting thing in this text, and maybe it's not worthwhile pointing out, but it says, an infant who lives but a few days, or an old man who does not live out his years, or one who dies at 100 will be thought a mere child. One who fails to reach 100 will be considered accursed. I mean, those words taken literally imply death. People might live a long time, but eventually they're going to die. Okay? And so some people, you can find, different scholars wrestling with what this is about. A book that I have that deals with, difficult texts in the Bible gives an explanation for that as some kind of a weird in-between stage where people will live longer but eventually die. And where in the world that fits, I'm not sure. I don't think that's the point. Again, this is just an example of how kind of prophetic and poetic imagery work. It's not, doesn't mean literally people will die. It's just getting us to think, contrast our present life, where, as a matter of fact, infants die, people who seem to be in health die. And it's simply a way of saying that we're not going to experience life that way. We're not going to experience death really at all. So I don't think this literally means that in the new heavens and the new earth, people are going to die. This is just a poetic way of making a point about life is going to be different. It's going to be a different kind of life then than it is now. We've seen this in Isaiah, for instance, a number of weeks ago, we saw that with the word forever. It says forever, and forever seemed like forever, but in the text, it's forever until. So forever seems like forever, but forever isn't always forever. You have to figure out, is this a forever or a different kind of forever? But that's just the way prophetic language works and poetic language works. Okay, so just behind these words, we need to get the idea, the image that Isaiah is trying to present to us, just of a different, new kind of life. They will not toil in vain or bear children doomed for misfortune. For they will be a people blessed by the Lord, they and their descendants with them. Before they call, I will answer. While they are still speaking, I will hear. The wolf and the lamb will feed together. The lion will eat straw like the ox, but dust will be the serpent's food. They will neither harm nor destroy on all my holy mountain, says the Lord. So this is the image of the future that Isaiah paints here. This is the end of the story, and it's not just heaven in the clouds, that kind of it's a new heavens and a new earth in physical bodies. This is why the resurrection is important. The body is a good thing. The idea of getting rid of our bodies and being a spirit in heaven, that's a Greek idea, not a biblical idea. The amazing future that God has for us is the new bodies, but bodies and enjoying food and golf, maybe. I don't care about golf myself. I'm fine if I never play golf for all eternity. Okay, but there's other things I would like to do, and I hope I'll be able to do them. I hope I can ride horses. Don't get a chance to do that much now. I hope to have my own barn full of horses in the new heaven and new earth. I think it will probably be there. I think I probably will. I'm going to have a body that can enjoy doing, it's a new heavens and a new earth. All the things good things that we enjoy are going to be part of that future. So the story ends well, but of course, there's always these reminders, even in the end of the book of Isaiah, that we just need to keep in our mind that there's a warning. It comes with a warning. So the next chapter, so this is what the Lord says. Heaven is my throne and earth is my footstool. Where is the house you will build for me? Where will my resting place be? Has not my hand made all these things so that they came into being? What's interesting about that is, it implies the impossibility of anyone building a house for God, except God let them. God did let them build a house for him where he could meet with them. And it's another way of communicating how great God is, and yet as a matter of fact, he's willing to be here close to us and with us. This is the one I esteem, he who is humble and contrite in spirit and trembles at my word. Those who choose humility to come into relationship with God, he esteems them. We looked at these verses a couple weeks ago. But whoever sacrifices a bull is like one who kills a man. Whoever offers a lamb, like one who breaks a dog's neck. Whoever makes a grain offering, like one who presents pig's blood. Whoever burns memorial incense, like one who worships an idol. These are people, as we said, who are doing their religious acts, but not out of heart, not out of love for God. They've chosen their own ways, and their souls delight in their abominations. So I also will choose harsh treatment for them, and will bring on them what they dread. For when I called, no one answered. When I spoke, no one listened. They did evil in my sight and chose what displeases me. So there's still that element of our choice. Isaiah is painting a picture of what is possible for us to experience, but we got to make the choice. We have to make the choice. Okay? If we don't want God's presence, well, He's not going to force Himself on us. If it's God you want, though, God will be there for you. So that's the end of the story in Isaiah. And if you looked at the Facebook group page, this was the image that I kind of created. My name is Isaiah, and Isaiah spoils the story. Okay, it's like, the end of the story in the Bible is the book of Revelation, and Isaiah is just kind of saying, that's not really accurate. The truth is, John in the book of Revelation plagiarizes Isaiah. John is like a student who steals someone else's paper, and writes it his own. In the book of Revelation, John, in this vision, Tanya's looking at me like, Mark, what are you talking about? But John takes Isaiah's ending and makes it his own ending in the book of Revelation, which is to say, this is what the story is about. Okay, this is from beginning to end, this is always where the story is heading, and Isaiah knew where the story was going, and John knew where the story was going. So this is how John ends the story in the book of Revelation. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had... I'm making sound there, so thank you. The first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. Let me stop there, by the way, because I've had people ask me, why doesn't God like the sea? It's not literal, okay? In the Bible, the sea is often a symbol for chaos, for rebellion against God, for that which is out of control. And I'll try to prove that to you in a moment. So it's not that literally there's no sea. Most of you like the sea, like to visit the seas. Some people, that's their favorite, to go to the sea. I think in the new heaven and the earth, there's going to be lots of water for people to enjoy. It's an image, it's a symbol of God's victory over every enemy. All the forces of chaos and death, it's going to be no more. So that's the significance of there being no more sea. It's an image to communicate an idea. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Now the dwelling of God is with men, and He will live with them. They will be His people, and God Himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe every tear from their eyes." That's straight from Isaiah. "There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away." All the way it used to be, how life seemed to work with pain and death, it's going to be gone. He who is seated on the throne said, "I'm making everything new." Then He said, "Write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true." And He said to me, the one on the throne said, "It's done. I'm the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To him who is thirsty, I will give to drink without cause from the spring of the water of life." That's straight from Isaiah as well. "He who overcomes will inherit all this, and I will be his God, and he will be my son." These words are arranged in an interesting fashion. And you can find some examples of this in the Bible. It was a common kind of technique that was used in ancient times. Contemporary writers tend not to use this particular kind of technique. But the idea is how lines correspond to one another. So the two A lines, the first and last, correspond to one another. The two B lines correspond to one another. Look at the C line. There's no longer any C. Look at the counter C line. That explains what that means. There's no longer any death or weeping. So again, the C isn't literal, not that there's going to be no more C. What's literal is no more death and pain. And one of the reasons, this really fits here is that the whole text in Revelation 21 is about God bringing beautiful order to reality. Okay? And so the very text is composed in beautiful order. This is amazing artistry with words. Tanya has her amazing artistry with paint. This is amazing artistry with words, to arrange words in a particular way to communicate the idea. The idea is God brings order, amazing order, to reality, to the universe, and the words are composed in this amazingly artistic, orderly way that supports that message. But one of the reasons this particular structure might be used, especially in the more complicated forms like this, is that it's a way of focusing your attention on the central part. Okay, so in this structure, the middle element, whatever that is the focus. It's like a bullseye. It's what we're supposed to focus on. So the center of this text is the two D lines. The holy city descends from heaven, and God dwells with his people. God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them, and they will be his people. God himself will be with them and be their God. In the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve had that kind of fellowship. God was with them. He was close. Face to face, you might say. I mean, what that looked like literally, I don't know, but they had that kind of relationship with God. Then sin disturbed that. So never again did humans experience that kind of closeness. God was kind of close, but kind of not. And so like with the Jewish people, they had their tabernacle and their temple, and it was a way for God to be close. They were sinful people, but God found a way to be close enough. But even then, there's that image of there's several walls and several layers. If you're going to really get into the presence of God, you got to do this and you got to do that. And as a matter of fact, most people couldn't get into the heart of God, the presence of God in that Holy of Holies. It was just the high priest once a year. That was the maximum access anyone had then. So God was kind of close, but then kind of separated. They were constantly reminded we're sinful people. And there's this barrier, this separation between us and God. It was a human-made separation. It wasn't what God wanted. It wasn't how God created the universe. And the whole story is about how God is restoring the possibility of this. God with us, Emmanuel. And so there was that Emmanuel, that God with us. And when we get to the book of John, in John 14, the disciples are like, show us the Father. And they don't get it yet. How close to God they've been with Jesus, that God has eaten food with them and walked with them, sat down with them, built a fire with them, slept under the stars with them. God was right that close. He had come down to make this possible. God's dwelling place is among people. He will dwell with them. New heavens and the new earth where He comes to our space. It's not so much the image that we go to His space in the clouds. He renews this space and He fills this space. He comes down to us. I keep saying, I don't know of any other God like this. I don't know of any other religion with this kind of God, who is the absolute sovereign Lord of the universe, and yet comes close to be with His people. So that's the center of the story, the center of the ending, that God's presence will be with His people. Of course, Revelation, like Isaiah, still has that word of warning, the importance of choice. I, Jesus, have sent my angel to give you this testimony for the churches. I'm the root and the offspring of David, the bright morning star. Again, it's that image that Tanya painted. It's straight from Isaiah. He's the Messiah who comes from the tribe of Jesse, from David. The Spirit and the bride say, come. Let the one who hears say, come. Let the one who is thirsty come. And let the one who wishes take the free gift of the water of life. Anyone who wishes, let the one who wishes take the free gift of the water of life. But I warn everyone who hears the words of this prophecy of the scroll, if he adds to them, God will add to that person plagues. If he takes away from this, God will take that person away from share in the life. And so that's just one of many images of the other alternative. If it's not the presence of God that you want, then there's another alternative. But you've got to make that choice. So here again is an image that we've used, and we looked at it briefly last week, and it'll be coming up again, of where we are in time. We're living now between the cross and the resurrection. We're living in these two worlds. We're citizens of heaven if you've chosen Jesus Christ. You also have, your earthly passport. And this is part of the tension in life. We're living in these two worlds at the same time, and we've experienced the cross. We know something about that, but of course we haven't yet experienced the resurrection. We don't yet experience the new heavens and the new earth, and we're living in this in-between time. And the text we're going to look at in the Gospel of John is all about that central time. What does life look like then? Now, the problem with this picture is there at the ending, because it would be really complicated, and I'm not sure how to picture what's really going to happen. I mean, here that green line kind of ends in an explosion, and you can have the image, and there are some images in the Bible that seem like it's just an ending. It's like, the entire universe just explodes and disappears. So there's sometimes that image, but other imagery is different. It's a cataclysmic kind of event, but something comes out at the other end. It's still the same thing, but it's kind of been burned over. It's like, if you're out in the country here in Latvia, you often see, farmers burning over their field. I mean, literally, they're burning it. They're burning everything that's there on it, but then they're going to replant. Okay, I think that's more the overall image of the Bible, is that, yes, at this time when Jesus returns, it's going to be a fiery kind of time, but it's going to be a fire of cleansing, and some things will be destroyed, but it won't all be destroyed. It will be renewed, and the fire will purify it. It's like this building, actually. This is what this building looked like just a few years ago. And if you went inside that building, as some of us did when the Latvian Biblical Center was thinking about taking this over, the inside is worse than the outside. The outside of that old building you might think is almost livable. If you went inside that building, some people were actually living there, but it wasn't livable space. You're in that building right now. This is the same building we are in right now that you're looking at there. I don't know if you paid attention when you came in, but it looks quite different. There's still brick. This This is the brick from that building. Okay? It's the same brick. It's been cleaned, of course. Same brick. Same dimensions. It's a little higher now because the roof was taken off and raised, and so some of you are sleeping up on the 4th floor. You can be happy that that happened because, you'd be walking around your rooms like this. Yeah, you'd be like that, living on the 4th floor. But it's been raised. All the floors were taken out. It was just the shell was left. So this is a completely new building in essence, but as a matter of fact, it's built on the old. Foundation had to be redone. I mean, tons of concrete had to be put down there to make the foundation strong. All sorts of things rebuilt. There's this huge concrete staircase kind of there in the middle, and that all just went. But it's the same building. This is the same building. I mean, this original building was a mission center, Bible and mission center built 100 years ago. So it's intentional to keep it. Some people said just destroy the whole thing and rebuild it, but we wanted to keep the history because there's a lot of good things in this building. It was built well, not taken care of. It just needed to be rebuilt into what we are now enjoying now. That's the image that I have, how I understand what's going to happen. It's going to be a fiery event when Jesus comes back, and it's going to be painful. It's going to be like severe surgery. It's going to be burning some things off. Someone going to your house and say, this has to go, and we're going to knock out this wall because this is really stupid. What were you thinking? And you're wondering, what is he doing? But when it's rebuilt, you're going to see this is what God had in mind. The future is very human affirming. Previous series when we talked about being in the image of God, I said that the Christian worldview is the most human affirming worldview that is available. That we're created in God's image for good. And He's going to raise our bodies in a good earth. And we're going to be able to continue all the good things that we enjoy and all the things we want to learn. And, like I said, golf. I don't plan to ever play golf in the new heavens and the new earth. Okay? But, why not? If there's some people who are into golf, why shouldn't they enjoy that? Why can we not see that as a gift from God for some people's enjoyment? Again, not my enjoyment, but there's other things I enjoy that is a gift from God. And why should He not continue to give those gifts? Why should He raise my body and then for me to float on a cloud playing a harp? Why would that be the point? So briefly, new heavens and new earth. Number one, one point of this is simply to not despair. To not despair with present life. When events like that happened this last week, it's easy to give up and just say, well, what is the use? Some people make fun of when something happens and Christians will say, I'm praying for you, or thoughts and prayers. And a lot of people say, what good are your prayers? And of course, it's a reminder that we need to do more than just pray. But if we believe in God, our prayers matter, and we need to not despair. When you lose a friend, don't despair. It's not the end of the story. In Shakespeare, everyone dies and his play ends. But Shakespeare is just Shakespeare, and Shakespeare is dead too. Okay? And his story isn't the story. Everyone dies, but it's not the end. And the other thing to remember is don't abandon the journey. Don't just give up. In this picture, and one of the things I try to picture with this illustration is that now, in this age, we live in the shadow of the cross. The cross is a guideline to how to live. We expect sacrifice. We live in hope of the resurrection, but not in the reality. The reality will come. We have to hold on to that. Okay. But in this age, we're going to get sick, and we're going to die, and we're going to have to give up a lot of things to pursue our purpose at this time. Life is a cross for followers of Jesus. He said that directly. You know, I mentioned that I like to ride horses. That's, you know, if I could get on a horse every day, I would do that. But the nature of my life here in Latvia is I haven't been on a horse for years. And the nature of my life is it doesn't seem to fit in. I can't invest money in that or time. Okay, and I just have to say, I just can't. There's nothing wrong with riding horses. I just don't see how it fits in my present life. Sometimes God might let me do that, and I hope He will. But right now, it's like riding horses. I got to nail it to a cross, and I have to let it die. And there's lots of things like that. You just have to let things die for now. I mean, I live here in Latvia. I've been here 25, 26 years, and so my family is in America. I don't really miss a lot about America, to be honest, but I do miss my family. But that's how life needs to be. If God calls me here, then I live in the shadow of the cross now. And life often feels like a cross now. And I ought not to abandon that journey now, because I know it's all going to change. I will have all the time with my family that I could ever hope for. I will. I will. And all the things I enjoy doing that maybe I can't now, I will. All those things, I'm not really giving them up. I'm just temporarily, and it seems long now. You know, it's a lifetime. Wow, it's years. Eternity, the new heavens, the new earth, this is just this much time in light of eternity. So keep your cross on your shoulders. It's not easy. Life might be bleak now, and it is sacrifice now. It is sacrifice now. If you're trying to live without sacrifice, then you're missing the point of the story. But don't abandon that journey. Don't give up. Don't try to revive some kind of pleasure that you need to give up now. Let it go. It'll come in its time, the new heavens and the new earth. All the possible joys you can imagine are yet available to God's people. That's the end of the story.